Hi, I'm Jake with Rock River Arms. I am going to show you how to complete a bolt carrier group assembly. To do this, you will need the following. These are the components that make up a complete bolt carrier group. Get your AR-15 bolt carrier, stripped, gas key screws, M16 firing pin, cam pin, and firing pin retaining pin. Your bolt, gas rings, extractor, extractor pin, extractor spring insert, ejector roll pin, ejector spring. This is our Carpenter 158 bolt. The first thing that I would recommend doing is installing the ejector. So what I do is I set them in the vise. You don't have to clamp really hard, just enough to hold it. Grab your ejector spring. There's two holes. One is the firing pin hole and the other one is your ejector hole. Go ahead and slide it down, make sure it's free of debris. Your roll pin, we use a set punch holder. It's a 16th inch set punch holder. Go ahead and insert your pin. I start it in the hole here for the ejector. Just pre-start it. Grab your ejector. The ejector has a notch cut out of it. That's where your roll pin will go to guide it in place. And where the notch is, I'll kind of angle it toward the pin just a little bit, so when I go to insert the pin, it falls right into place. So now, push down on the ejector using a punch. Use a nylon tip hammer. Go ahead and insert it as far as you can to where it stops up against the lugs. Now you can use a 16th inch punch to finish setting it all the way. Next thing you want to do is make sure that ejector goes down and back up freely. A troubleshooting note is to be sure that the ejector is slightly recessed from the top of the bolt. The next thing that you should do is after you install the ejector, check and make sure that that roll pin is not protruding out on either side. You want to make sure it's flush or just center within itself. Next, we're going to install the extractor spring and buffer into the extractor. You want to take a look at your extractor spring. There's a big side and a small side. The big side being your locking side, and your insert has a little flange at the bottom. That flange locks up in the big side. So you'll start by grab your insert. I'm holding onto the flange, going into the big side. I just kind of set it in there, and then I'll use a 16th inch punch, just trying to recess it just a little bit so it doesn't fall back out. The next thing you want to do is grab your extractor with the big side of the extractor spring going into the extractor, and you'll hear it click. Sometimes you can get it with your fingers, otherwise you can use a pair of needle nose. Using the needle nose pliers, when you slightly put pressure onto the spring, you'll feel it snap into place. Be careful not to damage the spring. If you're not centered, you could weaken the spring and slide it off to one side. The next thing you want to do is using soft vise jaws. Carefully set your extractor in. The spring goes toward the cam slot area. Use the corner of the vise jaw to slightly hold that into place while you can insert your pin. Making sure that this is flush as well. The next thing you want to do is grab your 16th inch punch, slightly push out on that extractor, be careful not to slip off, and just make sure that it can move freely. So once you have your extractor installed, the next step would be to install your gas rings. The reason why you want to do this last is while using a vise, you could damage your gas rings. So grab a gas ring. You can start it on anywhere. It doesn't matter which position you start it. What you want to do, though, is start one side of the gas ring and just kind of roll it around with your finger. Then your next one, you want to offset them so you don't leak gas pressure. I go with the 3-6-9 rule, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. So going ahead and just insert all three and make sure they're gapped evenly. After you've assembled your bolt, we're going to go into assembling your carrier. The next thing you want to do is grab your carrier and your gas key. Having the gas key faced away from you, make sure that the gas key slides freely with no burrs, anything going on inside here. Second, grab your gas key screws, and I just pre-start them in there by hand so you don't strip the threads. Mil-spec calls out for 70 inch-pounds for torque ratio on your gas key screws. If you do not have an inch-pound torque wrench, you can do it by hand using an Allen wrench. You want to snug your screws up. You want to go 1/8 of a turn past that. It should be equivalent to 70 inch-pounds. The next thing we're going to do is show you how to stake a gas key at home. So what you want to start with is place your carrier into a soft vice jaw and snug it up to where it will not move freely. We take a punch and modify the end of it just slightly, like a needle punch shape. When you do this, there's a ridge right here on top of the gas key. That's where you're staking. You're staking directly in the middle of that gas key screw on both sides. And all that does is it keeps the gas key screw from vibrating loose while functioning. So grab your hammer, just go about center of that gas key screw and tap it. You should see the contact point of the gas key going slightly into the screw. You kind of hold the punch at a downward angle so you don't slip off and drive up through the top. And that completes the staking of a gas key. After your staking process of the gas key, now we're going to install your complete bolt. If you look at your bolt, there will be two dimples on one side of your cam pin hole. Here are the flats and no flats. That's just to ensure that you cannot install your bolt incorrectly. The cam pin will only go in one way. The dimpled side keeps you from installing your cam pin. Holding your carrier in one hand and your bolt in the other, if the bolt is facing away from you, your extractor will always be on the right-hand side if you're using a right-handed bolt. You'll feel those gas rings slightly compress. Don't worry, you didn't hurt anything. Now you want to line up your cam pin slot. Go to the rear of this slot so that you can get your cam pin in. When you put your cam pin in, you want to hold it horizontally so it just bypasses the gas key. Go ahead and slide that down. Using a punch or your firing pin, you can slightly turn your cam pin 90 degrees. After installing your cam pin, hold the bolt carrier upside down with the gas key facing the table. Go ahead and grab your firing pin with the bell toward the top of it. Insert all the way down. To ensure that it's all the way down, you can use your finger or a punch and just tap it down to make sure it's all the way down. Holding it in the same position, grab your retaining pin, insert in. I like to go horizontally so that it's easier for it to go in. So I go in a downward in motion. The second thing you want to do is flip it upside down, tap it on the bench just to ensure that your firing pin is secured. When it's secured, the firing pin retaining pin should be in this location on the firing pin, not in front of the bell. And this completes the assembly of a bolt carrier group.